So my name is Michael Black. I was born on the 17th of December 1941. I lived in Stepney, but I was actually born in Reading. My parents were raised in the East End of London. My dad's family, they were refugees from Russia. And they came to England from Russia when he was about 3 months old. My mum's family were refugees from Poland. My mum was born in London. There were, in each of those families, 6 siblings, so they were quite large families. I was the middle child of 3. I had 2 sisters, one who was 6 years older than me and one who was 2 years younger than me. I was born in Reading, as I said, in 1941. My parents and my older sister had been evacuated there during the war to Reading because of the war. And the family returned to London when I was 3 years old. My dad located a 2-storey terraced house in Jubilee Street, which had been condemned, and I guess that he paid less rent because of that, and that house is still standing today as it happens. There was no bathroom, no inside toilet. To go to toilet, we had to cross a backyard. The toilet had a door on it, a wooden door, with a gap above and a gap below, big gaps. In the winter it was very cold as the wind would blow in, and sometimes snow would come in while you were on the toilet. We had no hot water in the house. If hot water was needed, we had to boil a kettle. We occupied the ground floor of the house. My uncle and aunt, who was my dad's sister, she and her husband occupied the first floor. In our section of the house, we had 3 bedrooms. We had a lounge. We had a largish kitchen, had enough room for a table in it. The kitchen had a butler's sink, and that was used for everything. Apart from cooking, we had some sort of rota where we washed. I can remember when I was about old enough, about 10, I think, I would walk down to the Mile End baths once a week with a towel and a bar of soap, and paid a small amount to have a hot bath. That was our washing facilities. We had a coal fire in the lounge. That was the only heating we had. And when the coalman delivered the bags of coal, he had to walk through our living accommodation and deposit the coal in a coal shed in the backyard. The family weren't lucky enough to get one of the new flats that I remember being available. Some were built in Jubilee Street, which were wonderful. They had central heating and hot water. My mother worked in a local dressmaking factory. My father worked in the clothing trade and in the fur trade. He was good with his hands. He did a variety of jobs. He was not often home. Unfortunately, he had an addiction to gambling. So he would be in gambling clubs and he would be spending often the wages that he collected. So we were very poor. My mum was the one who held everything together. She was always very encouraging and instilled in my sisters and me that we were just passing through this phase, that if we studied hard at school and got ourselves good jobs, we'd have a wonderful future. We all went to a local Jewish primary school in Stepney Green, and we all passed our 11 plus. I think it wasn't called the 11 plus, and it was called the scholarship. And we all went to a grammar school. My younger sister was particularly clever. She had one of the highest marks in the country from her scholarship. She was offered a free place at a boarding school in Sussex called Christ Hospital. And after a lot of agonising, my mum felt that she would have to miss out on the opportunity because even though there were no fees to pay, She didn't know whether she could sustain her there. When I was about 14 years old, my sister said that her friend at school had a brother who was interested in running, which I was, and he didn't have a particular friend, and he was looking for a friend. My mother urged me to make contact with him, and I did, and we became very good friends. He was a member of the Brady Boys Club, and he took me to the club, and I joined. A whole new world opened up for me when I went to that club. There was an atmosphere in Brady Club which was quite different to school. There was a canteen, my goodness. Everyone was warm and friendly, including the managers. I was able to socialise, to play sports, to get involved in projects and groups, and make many new friends and reinforce existing friendships, because some of my schoolmates were already members of that club. I'm able to say at the age of 80, I am still good friends and see regularly many of the, not less than there were, but many of the friends that I made and reinforced at Brady. It's a wonderful link between us all. There was a Brady Girls Club as well, and there were opportunities to socialise with the girls at what were called socials. Maybe later on they became discos, but they were socials to us at that time, where there was music and dancing. The Brady Boys Club was run by Yogi Mayer. He was a man who smiled a lot. He had an accent. He always knew my name and the names of all of the boys. He mispronounced them a lot, but he was revered by all the club members. I grew up in that club under Yogi Mayer. It was he who fostered in me and all the club members the use of initiative, resourcefulness, independence, as well as the need to work with others to achieve an objective. That was what Yogi instilled. I particularly remember, there are many things I remember from Brady, but I particularly remember my first holidays abroad with the club. We went to a youth hostel called in Oberhofen in Switzerland. We stayed there for 15 days. It was mixed actually, boys and girls by then. I think I must have been 16. One of the things that Yogi organised, there were many things while we were on the holiday, but one of the things he organised was a hitchhiking competition. So for the boys only. So 2 boys would pair up, and the plan was you went as far as you could and got back within 3 days, and you had to prove that you'd been where you said you'd been. I paired up with Michael Solomons, and we only had our rucksacks, we had our Youth Hostel Association membership card, we had a little money for food and emergencies, and we hitchhiked. And we got to Venice from Oberhofen in Switzerland. And we stayed in the youth hostel there. So they stamped our card so we could prove that we had been there. And we managed to get back. I won't explain all the adventures that we had on our 3 days, but it was a really enjoyable, but one of the nights sleeping on a wet cement floor in an unfinished house, I can remember that bit. And we won the competition. Now, can you imagine that being the case nowadays, that unsupervised boys of 16 are sent out 2 by 2 to hitchhike across Europe and back? It just wouldn't happen now. But that gave us and taught us independence, resilience, how to overcome problems, how to get on with people. I will always be grateful to him, to Yogi and the Brady Club for my education about life and how to deal with problems. That club, I would not have been the same person, and nor would many of the others who attended the club have been the same persons if it didn't exist. I'm aware from friends in the East End I had, not necessarily school friends, they lived locally and so we became friends. They never joined the club, and I know that some of them went to prison. I feel that getting us off the streets and into a social atmosphere where we wanted to be in that club and mix with people in the club and enjoy the activities, it kept us occupied, it kept us engaged, it kept us from doing things that perhaps we shouldn't have done. Some of my friends went on to uni, but I felt a duty and responsibility to try and provide some income for my family. So I didn't go to uni, although my A-levels would have allowed me to. I was considering the alternatives, and Yogi collared me to have a chat. And he asked me what I was going to do. And I told him that I needed to find a good job and to earn some money. So he started making telephone calls and fixed up for me to see various people that he knew. And I very well remember that the first interview I went to was at Shell House in London. I was taken up to the very top floor where the boardroom and the director's suites were. And I saw Mr. Mark Mothio, who was a director. And he occupied a very large office. And he asked me how Yogi was. And it seemed he knew him very well. And he was very complimentary in the remarks he made about him. He gave me an opportunity to join Shell, but I was too naive to realise that was a golden opportunity. And I thanked him, and then subsequently I wrote to him and said that I wouldn't take the job, but thank you for the offer. So I then got a job in the paper industry with a paper company. I learned a lot, but I was paid a very low salary. I still used the club gym and some of the facilities there, so in the evening. And Yogi saw me one evening and he asked how I was getting on, and I told him. Again, Yogi got on the telephone straight away. He called somebody who was an ex-Brady member, and he called somebody else who was in the paper industry, so it was another paper company, and got me an interview. And I joined that company for better salary and better prospects. And I ended up running that company. So that was a very good introduction, again through Yogi. I'm glad to say that eventually I started my own paper company up when I was 30, and it was very fruitful, and I still own the group even now, and that all started from a call by Yogi Mayer. Things changed in the years after I left Brady. Yogi moved on to another youth leadership role. The club relocated to Edgware and merged with Maccabi Association. Word was that skeet wasn't being used very often, certainly not in the way we had known. Then in 1978, I was advised that Yogi was retiring. He had a job as youth leader for the borough of Islington, and he was retiring from that job, and there was to be a party to honour Yogi's work in youth, and I was invited, and so were many other Bradians. It was a good party. We agreed after this party to get together and form the Bradians Association, which was for social events, to be organised so we would all see each other, whereas we hadn't been. And we were quite successful at that. Yogi agreed to be the life president, and there was a committee to organise. Later, towards the end of '78, I'm not 100% sure of the timing on this, we learned that Skeet was going to be closed down and sold by the Jewish Youth Fund, as the usage had failed, or fallen, shall we say, considerably. The emotion that stirred up, that news, it was overwhelming. Everybody I knew that was in the Bradians, they were on the telephone talking about it. It was a really bad feeling. As ex-Brady members, we all had such wonderful memories at Skeet and of Skeet that the thought of Skeet closing down was appalling. So the Bradians Association met and formed a small committee, an action committee, including Yogi, of course. Couldn't miss him out. A proposal was prepared, and the proposal was presented to the Jewish Youth Fund, whereby the Bradians would take over the lease of Skeet and put right the repairs which were needed and fill the house with youngsters throughout the year. That was the essence of it. So we met with the Jewish Youth Fund trustees and we reached agreement. We reached agreement on a trial period with a promise that they would extend that period if we could show we could achieve what we had proposed. So I set up at that time the Bradians Trust and began the legal process to ensure that it was registered with the Charity Commission, and subsequently a new lease for Skeet was granted to the Bradians Trust. So the Bradians Trust had a lease for Skeet, and there we were in control, and it was back in the fold. So for the next 4 decades, I and my co-trustees had the pleasure of ensuring that Skeet was available, not only for Brady and ex-Brady members and their families, but to have weekends at Skeet for many other youth groups, not 100% from the Jewish community, but of course a large proportion. And the groups included children who were disabled or had special needs. They had a great time. Their carers or their parents had some respite. They knew their kids were in good hands and enjoying weekends at Skeet. It was very worthwhile, and the annual usage of Skeet during that whole period that we had responsibility was around 4,000 bed nights. We called them bed nights, but it basically means the number of nights children slept at Skeet. So an average of, say, 2,000 children every year was using Skeet. And we had to raise donor funds for running costs and repairs, employ permanent housekeepers and manage the house. That all went rather well, but time moves on. In 2007, I had meetings with the Jewish Youth Fund and agreed that the Jewish Youth Fund would provide funding to upgrade Skeet, to give a modern kitchen, which we didn't have, to give ensuite shower and toilet facilities to the dormitories instead of all having to go downstairs to get washed. To actually improve the grounds as well for the sports activities that were going on. The total cost was about £1.5 million. And I had overall management of the project, so I was very much involved with it, employing professionals like architects and surveyors and builders. The project was completed in 2009. The reopening, it was a very proud moment for me and for my fellow trustees and for all the Bradians who attended, and there was a big group. And especially a proud moment and a happy moment for Yogi, who just could not believe that the improvement I had made to Skeet, and without losing any of the original features of Skeet. A 400-year-old house, you don't want to change it too much. Now less happy because subsequently the Jewish Youth Fund, with newly appointed trustees, were not as supportive of Skeet. And they arranged for a new lease to be issued to a company called Skeet Hill Management Limited, in which we were initially involved, but with a set of trustees which did not include any from the Bradians Trust. So we were basically at the end of our line. And Skeet's usage for groups continued until 2016, but bookings reduced again. A new charity took over, and at this time is still using Skeet, but they're more focused on residential bookings, promoting environmental education for young people, rather than the group weekends of the type that we had promoted for so long. So all good things must come to an end, and it seems that that's about to happen in that direction, and we're all going to be very sad for it. So my legacy from Brady consists of no negatives, many positives, including long-standing friendships, some wonderful and enduring memories of my youth, including that feeling of happiness when I walked through the door of the Brady Club. That I remember. That's my legacy.